Okay, welcome to another episode of Touchdown Labs. I got a special insider here. We have Zach Wolchuk from 105.3 The Fan. Zach, I am super excited to talk to you. I know I don't have a lot of time, so I got a lot of questions to get through and a lot of things from the fans. And the first thing that I want to start with is a little bit about your journey, Zach. I did some research here, and it's not like I'm just throwing you on the show and forcing you to answer questions for me. But your first podcast, Nosebleed Seats, went to broadcasting school. You really had a thing for this and got that internship at 105.3 The Fan, started at GBag Nation, and have kind of been on GBag Nation ever since. And Zach, I'm from Toronto, so you have this Toronto to Dallas connection now. And really, for fans like me, I'm getting a lot of information, a lot of inside information from guys like you reporting on this every single day. And you're keeping me up to date. I know you're keeping a lot of other people up to date as well. So wanted to say thank you and kind of start the podcast off like that.
That's awesome, man, dude. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that. Pretty cool to now have a friend here in Toronto, and I'm happy to be on with you.
That's awesome. And honestly, Zach, I want to get right into it. So for me, you're helping me achieve my dream. And why not me? I want to talk Cowboys and I want to kind of do this for my future. So you're helping me kind of get the fans what they want. And I'm going to start off with the Brian Schottenheimer hire.
Mhm.
What was your initial take? I know you weren't too happy with the process, but now that things have kind of calmed down, how have your thoughts changed?
Yeah, look, I mean, you're right. I wasn't happy with the process. I think when you look at positives of what Brian Schottenheimer can bring, I think the Cowboys clearly stress continuity. That was something that was very important to them. I know Dak was a big fan of the Brian Schottenheimer hire. It was told to me that, maybe the front office went to Dak and specifically said, like, hey, what do you think, Kellen Moore or Shoddy? And he said, I like Shoddy. So I think his ability to connect with players, communication behind the scenes, I think he did a really good job week to week, kind of putting in the game plan. And his first initial role was kind of working with the defensive side of the football with Dallas. And I think a lot of the defensive players really liked him and gravitated towards him as well. So he's kind of a leader of men guy. Schotty's lived this. I mean, he's been in the league for 25 years. His father, Marty Schottenheimer, one of 9 coaches to win 200 games in the NFL. Unfortunately, never got the ultimate Super Bowl, but he's a guy that's really worked his way up. It's a great opportunity for him. To me, the big question was like, if Brian Schottenheimer were this super desired head coach, why is it that in the last 15 years, since he last really got his looks when he was OC of the Jets, and he was with Mark Sanchez, and they went to back-to-back AFC Championship games. Why has nobody else been knocking down the door and wanting his services, even as an offensive coordinator, as a play caller? His offense is running the football pretty strong. And he did have 3 good years with Russell Wilson, but that was the let Russ cook years. And I think that might have been more of a product of Russell Wilson just being in his prime than it was necessarily Brian Schottenheimer as a coordinator. But we got to be optimistic. We got to hold out some hope here. And I do think his ability to connect with players, maybe he's gone ahead and evolved a little bit and figured out some new things as he spent some time away from calling plays. But those things, I guess, would be positives if you're a Cowboys fan and you're trying to grasp, why Shoddy?
Zach, I'm 32. I'm in the same boat as you. I haven't seen a championship. I've been a fan of this team for like 25 years since I've been a kid. Can't remember really any success other than the recent years that we've had in the regular season. And what I can say is thinking back to the Garrett years, maybe, fighting for that last game in the playoffs where we tend to go ahead and lose. So I want to
Mm-hmm.
talk about some things here, and I've been thinking about it myself, and it's Brian Schottenheimer X factors. And this is one of the things that came to my mind, Zach, when he went through the press conference, was really the expectations around himself and his father, and him saying he's going to win that Super Bowl for his father. I think that's a special kind of fire and motivation somebody has in them that maybe other coaches don't have because they can't relate to that. He's grown up in this family. I think it is a unique situation when you kind of think about that and them mentioning how much that matters to them in the press conference. I want
Mm-hmm.
you to kind of hit on, maybe him coaching Drew Brees, him having a hand in coaching Andrew Luck. He did coach Russell Wilson, kind of got Mark Sanchez to the playoffs that those years when he was an OC on the Jets. Now, what about fans thinking he's going to be conservative? He's going to run the ball a little bit too much. He's going to change the offense and maybe have a hand in what we did previously with Garrett, where it's run, pass. Now, anything in that kind of take that you can say that would be true or it's false, or am I way off guard on that?
I think, he's talked a lot about wanting to marry the run and the pass. So I don't think it's going to be very similar to Garrett. I do think you might get a heavy emphasis on the run. That's something that the Cowboys definitely want to do. And Schotty's always, I mean, he has, as he said in the presser, there were 2 times that his offense has led the league in rushing. The quarterbacks speak highly of him. I know Drew Brees is a guy that he worked with that speaks highly of him. But then again, 2 years ago, or in 2021, he worked with Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville, and they accomplished really nothing there. So look, Dak loves the guy, and I
Yeah.
think there are certain things that are going to work out in terms of the running game and the play action. Like, I think Dak is good in play action. I think one thing now is Dak is no longer a super mobile quarterback, especially after another injury. So how can you help him? And I think when you've seen the Cowboys at their best, they are running the football well. In 2016 under Dak Prescott, they ran the football extremely well with Ezekiel Elliott. Can they get back to that? The offensive line is not quite what it was, but you've taken 2 offensive linemen in the first round here with Guyton and then previously with Tyler Smith. You hit on Tyler Smith. They need Tyler Guyton to figure himself out. Cooper Beebe's my guy. I think he's going to be tremendous if they move him to guard. I think he can be an all-pro type of player. If they keep him at center, I think that he'll continue to progress and be a quality center in the National Football League. What do they do in this upcoming draft with the offensive line? I think they've got to take a running back. And maybe it's Ashton Genty, 12th overall. But I think that, some of the stuff with the tight, condensed formation, Shotty's talked about a lot more, which is what the Rams have tremendous success with under Sean McVay. Keep an open mind, but it's also one of these things where we've heard the good talk in the offseason. What do we see on the field in the fall? And I think we got to believe it, see it to believe it type of thing. But that's what I'd look for here.
Zach, I'm going to stick to the offense for the next couple of minutes here. And we mentioned that, Shotty did lead the team, NFL, really 2 times in rushing. And is this pointing to Genty getting picked, or, is this pointing to us being guaranteed to draft a back within the first 3 rounds? Criticized to be conservative and really pointing towards running the ball. Does that mean wide receiver is out of the question in round 1?
I don't think anybody's at any position is out of the question. I would tell you this. As we stand here on January 29th recording this, my belief is Ashton Genty will be a Dallas Cowboy if he's on the board 12th overall.
Love it.
He is my 3rd best player in the draft. I've got him right behind Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, and then it's Ashton Genty. He's clean. He breaks a lot of tackles. He's absolutely fantastic. And the whole notion of backs are a dime a dozen, I think it's a little bit crap. I mean, can you find an Isaiah Pacheco in the 7th round? Yeah, of course you can. But if you look at who led the league in rushing over the course of this year, a lot of them 1st and 2nd round picks. The majority of the top 10 guys were 1st and 2nd round picks. So I think absolutely they've got to come out with a running back in the first 3 rounds. But if Ashton Genty's there, I do think he will be the pick. And I think that, at this point, you're seeing a running back revival. All the teams that were best in the league in rushing, top 6 teams, they all made the playoffs this year. I don't think that's coincidental.
Zach, what if he's not there, and we have people like Campbell, Kelvin Banks,
Yeah.
Michael Williams, James Pierce, Starks on the board? What do the Cowboys do? Is Josh Simmons an option there if he comes out healthy? Is that kind of a sleeper pick that people aren't thinking about that we can take on the offensive line? Is there a trade back scenario where we kind of take somebody like Mike Green, who interviewed really well with Kyle Yeomans on DallasCowboys.com that I heard yesterday? What do you think we do in a situation like that where we're a little bit wiped off the board offensively?
Yeah, I would take Mike Green at 12. I've been on the Mike Green hive here for about a month now since I got to watch some of his Marshall tape. I love Mike Green. I think he's the 2nd best edge in the draft to Abdul Carter out of Penn State. What he's able to do with the length, the first step quickness, the power, the speed to power. I love him. And I know he's a little bit light. 235, I think, is what he weighed in at, but his measurables compare similar to what you had at Von Miller, who went, I believe, 2nd overall back to the Denver Broncos. So I love Mike Green. I would look there. I don't know if the Cowboys will. I do think a sleeper could be Walter Nolan, the defensive tackle out of Ole Miss. I think there's some scouts in the Cowboys building that are big fans of Walter Nolan. But to your point about offensive line, it really just depends on what they like. I think Will Campbell from LSU is a guy that needs to kick inside and play guard. I think Banks is athletic enough, Kelvin Banks out of Texas, to play tackle, but he could be better suited kicking inside to guard. That's the issue with these offensive tackles. If you trade back, I'd love that. But the problem is you've got to have somebody on the board that somebody wants to come up and grab. And in this draft class, I'm not sure if that will be the case. So you'll just kind of have to monitor, all right, who's there? Is there a team that maybe they do want to move up and get? Is it a wide receiver? Is it a Luther Burden out of Mizzou? I don't know. But I do think offensive line of scrimmage, I'm never going to argue that. I think you can always continue to pump on the offensive and defensive lines. But I'd also like a Micah Parsons out of Ohio State. I think he's clean. I've talked about it on our show on the G-Bag Nation. There's a lot of players in this draft that maybe they've got the skill set that you like, but there's a question, like consistency, whatever it might be, you need to hit in this first round. I think Genty's safe. I think Emeka Egbuka is a safe pick. I think Mike Green is going to be a really, really good NFL player. I don't have a question about that. I think there are a lot of question marks with the offensive linemen in this draft class.
Zach, am I wrong to think Ibuka and Burden belong in the 20s and 12 is too rich for them? They're not coming in to me as a better prospect than CeeDee Lamb, and I'm a little bit worried about that. So when I'm going to a skill position that high and I'm picking somebody there, I'm a little bit worried that they're not going to be that wide receiver 1 and we're drafting for a wide receiver 2 here and it's not BPA.
Yeah, it's you're right. This draft class at receiver at the top is nowhere close to say CeeDee Lamb's draft class or even a year ago. It's the same thing with the offensive tackles. That's the issue. Like Banks would have been going around where Tyler Guyton was last year in the 20s. I don't think he's cracking the top 5 of the offensive tackles. So I think we just have to adjust our thinking here. Whereas in another draft, I'm with you, Burden and Egbuka, they're probably not top 15 players. In this year's draft, I think they are. So this is just not one of those drafts that has the elite guys at the top, but there's a lot of good players. Ted McMillan would be the guy that I do think is an elite wide receiver prospect. Problem is, I don't think he's getting close to you at 12.
That's the issue that I'm having. I don't think Tech McMillan's going to fall, and I think we're going to have players like maybe Genty, Starks, and Mike Green left on the board that we're going to have to choose from.
Yeah.
And really, it's does Eberflus get the pick there? Does Schottenheimer have a say? Is it all about us picking Genty and kind of changing our system? Brian mentioned this on the Fan as well. We're lining up as the widest team, and I know you guys had John Owning come on there and kind of talk about this. We're trending more. Are we trending to more of a Shanahan and McVay offense now, where we're a tighter fit? Some of these motions are actually going to stress the offenses a little bit more. They're not just kind of drawn up and I would say window dressing as Mike McCarthy used to do it.
Yeah, I'm hopeful. That's something where I don't think there was a lot of alignment with Mike and Shoddy always and what he wanted to do. So I did like what I heard from Brian Schottenheimer when he talked about like, hey, we're going to use motion with a purpose. We're also going to go ahead and make sure that we are using more condensed formations, especially in the running game, right? I mean, that's something where the Cowboys don't have really good blocking wide receivers. When you see teams like the Rams and the 49ers, for instance, a big reason why these guys are able to have success, if they end up hitting the edge, you've got guys like Brandon Ayuk that is a willing blocker, Deebo Samuel that is a willing blocker, Puka Nacua is a really good blocker. Best asset that the Cowboys got trading for Jonathan Mingo is that dude's probably their best blocking wide receiver. Jalen Tolbert cannot block. He is not very good at that whatsoever. So you're now asking receivers all the way outside to now run back in, create a seal block here so I can get my running back free space on the outside. The condensed formation is going to help that out a little bit. So I'm hopeful that you will see more of a modern, up-to-date, not a static approach that Mike McCarthy was using.
Zach, I know we don't have you for too much longer, and I want to talk about some of the recent news that we had today with the coaching hires. And there's a few coaches. Aaron White-Cotton that was hired. I know you're a little bit, hype on him. He had Will McDonald there with 10.5 sacks. Quinnen Williams there. He had him playing really well. Bryce Huff as well. Quentin Jefferson. Can you talk a little bit about the hires? But the potential OC hire with Clayton coming in, him changing the scheme and running the ball a little bit better, and what that does for the Cowboys. It looks like the Jones family is actually letting Schottenheimer kind of pick his assistants, pick his coaches, and not force anyone down his throat.
Yeah, I think the Cowboys tend to do this at first. Like, they'll let you hire your guys at first. We saw that with Mike McCarthy, brought in Mike Nolan, who was a buddy of his as defensive coordinator. Now, when that failed, that's when it's okay. We're now going to come in here and kind of let you know this is who we'd like you to hire. So that's when you get a Dan Quinn. That's when you get a Mike Zimmer, who the Jones family is familiar with. The Clayton stuff is not finalized yet, and I know Brian
Okay.
Broaddus was on our show that said we might need to tap the brakes on that. This might be a situation where Arizona doesn't want to let him leave the building, and he's not able to ultimately get to Dallas. But fingers crossed, because I do love what he does with the variety in the running scheme there. I think the Cowboys' run scheme has been poor. But Dave Barganzi, linebackers coach, was with Flus when he was on the Cowboys staff in 2012 to 2013. Was also with him with the Bears. Bears linebackers loved him there, so Barganzi could be a good hire. Andre Curtis, defensive passing game coordinator. That's a guy that has ties to both Schotty and Eberflus, was with the Seahawks on the same staff as Schotty, was a DB's coach, passing game coordinator there. But I am really excited. I mean, you hit on it with Aaron Wycott. I mean, this is a guy been on Robert Saleh's staff in San Francisco, where the defensive line was excellent. It was really worked his way up from Jacksonville, where he started, 2 seasons in Buffalo. But the last 4 to 5 years that he spent with the Jets, they've been really up and down. But one thing has been constant, and it doesn't matter who they've had there, and I get it, you're coaching talented players, right? And a lot of times players can make the coaches, but what he's done is get the most out of said players. I am really excited to see what he can do with the defensive line. That really, you're going to have a whole lot of new faces. Are the Cowboys able to bring back Osa Odighizuwa? Can they bring back Chauncey Golston? But he's going to be good for players like Marshawn Nealon going into year 2.
I think
For the preseason game, violence and effort. Those two things will never, ever, ever change for us. Violence and effort, violence and effort. Now, the technique part of it, like this hand placement here, this step, this footwork, that stuff is all nuanced things that you add into the game that you're talking about. But when you're down in that area, in the trenches down there, some of that stuff kind of goes out the window, especially if you play with violence and effort.
that's the thing that fans don't understand. That there's a ton of free agents right now on the defense. D. Law is a free agent. Jordan Lewis is a free agent. You know, Kendricks is a free agent at linebacker. What's this team going to look like? They are going to have to learn 3 new defenses in 3 years, but it's going to be a lot of new faces that are on the team as well. Any concerns with Cowboys fans thinking that he's going to be the next Rod Marinelli?
I think Flus likes a little bit bigger bodies along the defensive line. I mean, I think that, I can get the fear there. Like, he's a lot of bend, don't break. I'm going to play cover 2. I'm not going to go ahead and disguise like Zim was doing. I would have loved to get Mike Zimmer back. The only way you would have been able to do that is probably Mike Zimmer, the head coach, and then you can say, hey, Shotty, do you want to be Zim's offensive coordinator and call the plays? Ultimately, that's probably the route they should have gone if they really cared about continuity and keeping all this stuff the same. That way you're not in a year 3 of changing over defensive coordinators, which caused an issue the first half of the season for the Cowboys. Maybe going into another year where you haven't had Dan Quinn and a lot of these younger players really love DQ and had success under DQ. So it's almost like I've got to see the defense work with what Mike Zimmer was preaching and wanting to do. You might not have as much pushback since it was 1 year with Zim, and now you've got Flus in here. So I don't think it's going to be copy and paste with Marinelli. I think Flus is a little bit better. He's great with the turnovers, which is very similar to what you had with Dan Quinn, but it is a similar basic cover 2 defense. It's not going to trick you up too much and bend, don't break type of approach where you'll give up some yards, but they're stingy in the red zone.
I know fans who watch the film know that 3 technique's important for him.
Yeah.
DeForest Buckner was traded to him, right? And he kind of anchored his defense around that. So let's see what he does with the defensive line. He'll be great for the linebackers for sure, and we definitely need help there. But Zach, I definitely appreciate your time. I respect your time. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm hoping we started this Dallas to Toronto connection and we can kind of keep this going in the future. Ton of things to ask you, but want to say you're doing a great job at the Shrine Bowl, kind of covering players there as well. You and Vok are doing a fantastic job, and like I said, you're just helping another guy work towards his dream. Appreciate you. Appreciate everything you said today. And if there's one thing you can leave the fans with, any kind of Cowboys nugget, is there anything you got for us?
Ooh, man, a Cowboys nugget to leave you with. Goodness gracious. Oof. I'll say this. I don't think DeMarcus Lawrence is coming back. I don't think that is a Cowboys free agent that will be back in Dallas. You might have some hope with Osa. He might be priority number 1, but I think I'd be surprised if Tank Lawrence is back with the star on his helmet next year.
Interesting. Thanks so much, Zach. I appreciate your time. You have a great day.
Thank you.
Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler.